Thank you so much. Ooh, I'll hold that water on there. How we doing tonight, guys?
Come on.
Oh, that was so much fun. Which one of you lost out $50 on the dog? Dang, man. $50 for that
I was
dog?
texting my wife and I couldn't get her to respond.
Well, you should have got the dog for your wife.
We already had two.
See, I can't really talk because last time my wife took me to go get a dog, we were in a foundation meeting and she walked in and she was crying and she said that she heard about she wanted to get a Dalmatian and she heard about a Dalmatian that was deaf and nobody wanted and was several hours away, and so she knew that this Dalmatian's probably going to get whatever is going to happen to her, and so I just knew. I said, hey guys, I'm sorry, but the meeting's over. And so we went, and I showed up there, and I picked out 6 dogs, and then they only let me take home 3. So, and we still have those 3. And honestly, if I wasn't getting kind of held back, I would have been bidding on that one too. So, guys, that was so awesome. That was so much fun. I loved it. Thank you so much, Rob, and all your brothers and your family and the entire team, Life Prep Academy. Thank you guys for having me. So grateful to be here. Arthur, thank you for sharing your testimony. It's incredible. It really is. Thank you for sharing your gift with the world. The Rickersons, I want to thank you guys for sponsoring this, and just all of you that have just stepped up to make this happen. And I really want to thank all of the students that came to support G1, Joshua, Lucy, Emily. I mean, y'all's testimonies are incredible. Your talent is incredible. And if that's not a reminder of why we're here, if that's not a reminder of what we're all investing in the next generation, of why we're coming together so that we can see them live the purpose that God has for their life.
Come on.
Albert Einstein was boarding a train in Boston, and the conductor's coming back to take everybody's tickets. And as he's taking tickets, he sees, oh shoot, that's Albert Einstein. Like, dang. And so when he gets to Albert Einstein, he sees Albert Einstein. He's like, can I have your tickets, sir? And Albert Einstein's looking in his pockets, in his jacket, in his coat, in his briefcase. He can't find it. And he's like, hey, you're totally good. I know who you are. You're Albert Einstein. I got you. You're totally good. Don't worry about it. I got you. So he keeps going and he punches everyone's ticket. And he keeps punching. And every now and then he turns back because he wants to see one of the most famous men in the world, one of the smartest men in the world, one of the most iconic men in the world is on his train. So he keeps looking back. But every time he looks back, he sees Albert Einstein is still going through his jacket, going through his pants, going through his briefcase, still looking for his ticket. And he's like, man, hey, Mr. Einstein, don't worry about it. I got you. And so he keeps going and he punches the rest of the tickets and he gets to the end and he looks back and Albert Einstein is still going through his luggage looking for this ticket. And he walks back and says, Mr. Einstein, I got you. I know who you are. And Albert Einstein said, yeah, I know who I am too. The problem is, I don't know where I'm going. Isn't that why we're here though? So that the next generation knows who they are and where they're going. That's ultimately why we're here, is so that every boy and girl knows how valuable, how loved, how special, how unique, how one of one, how gifted, how incredible they are. That there's not one life, not one kid that's an accident, that's here by happenstance. But everyone has an incredible gifting that is loved by the creator of this universe. But you see, what's also happening is some crazy stats. Did you know that 12% of our daily thought are spent some form of comparison? Why? Because we're told that we need to look like somebody else. I need to dress like somebody else. I need to change and adapt to be like somebody else. But when you know the truth is, God didn't create you to be like anybody else. He created you and every boy and girl in love, by love, and for love. And if God wanted you to be like somebody else, he would have made you like somebody else. 57% of high school girls experience persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness in 2021. And just this last year, 1 in 5 high school students seriously considered suicide. 1 in 5. 2 nights ago, I finished an event, and I was getting on a plane, and I was opening just letters that I had been given. And just ironically happened to open this letter from a student at Harvard. And this is his words, his opinion, not mine, but he shares, "Harvard breaks people. For the first time, our exceptionalism isn't enough. More than half of all Harvard students experience symptoms of depression during their 4 years. Other students often struggle finding their purpose in an environment of vanity. For so many, their thirst for meaning. We're trying to find our love and our purpose, but it goes unquenched." I was just 2 nights ago when I was opening that letter, and I thought, man, how much does that fit why we're here tonight? When talented, amazing boys and girls are still looking for their purpose and their meaning, but it's going so many times unquenched because we're looking in so many different directions. When ultimately, what if we just told them the truth? The truth of how valuable every life is. The truth how important their life is. The truth is how loved they are by the creator of the universe. You see, one of the things is that there are so many voices that are trying to speak into every single boy and girl. But what voice is going to be the loudest? When I was a freshman at the University of Florida, I was so excited to be at Florida. I was so excited to start my freshman year, and the year started really well. And the first few games were going, the season was going great for us. And what was so fun is that every home game, we would leave the hotel we'd stay at, we'd get on a bus, and we'd drive to the stadium. But before we walk in the stadium, we walk through something called the Gator Walk. And for an average game, there'd be 15, 20,000 fans, and for a big game, it could be 30, 35,000 fans. And they would be packed, absolutely losing their minds, so excited for the game. And you want to talk about getting ready for a game and being excited? Like, you walk by 35,000 fans that are screaming for you, cheering for you, like you were amped, you were ready to play. It is so motivating. But you see what happened after a few games is I would start walking down this Gator Walk, and I'd be high-fiving fans, and then I would see some fans with my jersey on, and I would start to think to myself, dang, I might have made it. I might be pretty cool. I might be somebody. Yeah, that's kind of sweet. That's awesome. But you see, then I'd walk a few more feet, and I would see a mom and her son, and she'd say, "Hey, Timmy, I just want you to know you're her son's role model." And I'd start to think, not if you knew me on my worst day, I wouldn't be yours or your son's role model. Not if you saw my worst thoughts, my worst days, my worst actions, my worst words, I wouldn't be your role model. And then I would keep going, and then you'd have some of the whatever team we're playing, some of their fans sneak in there, and they would say things that I can't repeat, especially here, to you. And then you would have want to have an outburst of anger to respond, and you'd have all those thoughts. And then you would get to the end, and there would be all the media that would want to get a final quote or follow you walking in or whatever they wanted to do. That was most of the time someone kind of get in the way. And you would realize, man, I'm going to be evaluated, and people are going to make a judgment on me based on whatever happened the next 3 hours. And so you would have all those voices of fear. Dang, will people like me? In doubt. Am I good enough? So it was crazy, this whole walk, there would be all these voices. There would be voices of pride and arrogance, of man, I'm somebody. There would be voices of guilt and shame. Because of my worst days, there would be voices of anger. There would be voices of, I'm just not enough. Too much pressure. All of these voices. So I had to do something. And so I got the little iPod thing back in the day, because I'm old, you know. And the little thing with the circle around it, you like run it back. And so I got that with my little headphones, and I put one headphone in, and I let the other one go, and I put it in my jacket, and I would be the first one off the bus, and I would hug all my teammates and let them pass. Then I'd be the last one through the gator wall, and I would put back the other one in. Because when I could listen to these voices, I wanted to hear a different voice. And I would hit play on a song called The Voice of Truth by Casting Crowns. And it says, the voice of truth tells me a different story. The voice of truth says, do not be afraid. The voice of truth says, this is for my glory. Out of all the voices calling out to me, I will choose to listen and believe the voice of truth. You see, I don't have to sit there and listen to that voice of arrogance and pride, because I know I'm saved by grace. I also know that I don't have to listen to that shame and guilt, because I get to look back and be reminded I'm not defined by my sin, but I am defined by the cross, and that it counted for me. And I know that, you know what, it is a lot of pressure, but I'm more than a conqueror through him who loved me. And so we get to go and understand the voice of truth. But what is the voice of truth? It's God's promises, God's word, that's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So when we get to tell the next generation who you are and whose you are, that's the voice of truth. And when everybody is trying to say, you need to change, you need to adapt, you need to be like this, we get to say, no. God's created you in love, by love, and for love. You are one of one. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You don't have to be like anybody else. But you get the chance to be everything that God created you to be. You see, we say that a lot. It's always said in churches so many times, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. But what does that even mean? Fearfully and wonderfully made. Fearfully means awesome. And wonderfully means unique and set apart. And I've been fortunate to get to travel a lot of places around the world. And I've seen so many of the different wonders of the world. Some of the natural wonders. Some of the ancient wonders. So many unique things. Just last year we were in Egypt and we were in the pyramids. And it's so cool. And we were on Tebo Mountain and been to so many of those cool places. And some of them are really exciting. But I got to be honest, some of them are overrated. They really are. It's like, dang, this was so built up. It's one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. There's so many cool things. And you know what's interesting? When you actually get there and you see some of them, you realize that it's not actually even that all of them are necessarily that amazing. I mean, they're really cool. But really, so many reasons why we say that, it's because they're unique and set apart. They're different than most other things. But did you know that you and every other man, woman, boy, or girl is more awesome, more unique, and more set apart than any of the 7 wonders of the world? You see, what happens when you understand that about your life is it doesn't give you arrogance, it gives you confidence that I know that the God of this universe created me for a purpose. And as long as I have breath, I do have purpose. I'm not here by happenstance. And I'm not here by an accident. And when a life understands that, and when a life hears that, and when a life knows that, everything changes. Everything changes. And so when you hear this, and the purpose and the love and the meaning is going unquenched, what happens when he knows that? He's loved, and he's valuable, and he's one of one. Everything changes. Did you know our English word education comes from a Latin word meaning to lead into? And do you know why we're here? Is to lead every one of these boys and these girls into their purpose, into their calling, into knowing how loved and how valuable they are. You see, part of why we're here is so that they hear the voice of truth, so that they know how loved they are. But then it's to also teach them and challenge them to live out their calling. What does calling even mean? Best definition I've ever heard is an urgent divine invitation to accept responsibility for a particular task. An urgent and divine invitation to accept responsibility for a particular task. And you know what's so awesome is every single one of us has a calling and a purpose and a plan. And I believe it's urgent, and I also believe it's divine. But the question is, will we accept responsibility for that? Will you accept responsibility? Will I accept responsibility? And then will we also accept responsibility for telling the next generation that there's a great purpose and a plan for their life? Yeah, I've been so fortunate to see so many young people that have finally realized this, and then you see the impact that could come through their lives. And I'm just reminded of one sweet young girl that grew up in one of the worst areas of South Africa, in one of the biggest slums in South Africa, and she grew up seeing desperation. And one of the issues in South Africa, but especially in Johannesburg alone, is that 3 to 4 babies every single day get thrown away. Literally thrown in the dumpster, thrown in the trash, terrible things. Every single day, 3 to 4 babies, and she got to see this in front of her every single day. And she's smart, and she's brilliant. And she had an opportunity to leave, to go to a lot of different places, to get jobs, to continue her education in other places, but she said, no, I have an urgent and divine invitation to accept responsibility for what I've seen my whole life. And now we get the privilege of working with her every day. And this last year, this amazing young girl, she had the chance to help rescue so many babies, but also she had the chance to help create awareness to over 90,000 women that are in desperate situations. One girl that had the opportunity to go do a lot of amazing things and things that most people would have accepted because they're easier and it's comfortable. But she said, no, God's opened my eyes to this, and I'm going to accept responsibility, and I want to help as many of these moms, as many of these babies, as many as possible. And this last year, she got to share with 90,000 desperate women and children. That's accepting responsibility for a particular task. You see, but also what we get to share with the next generation of boys and girls is that we think, hey, but to actually do anything or have any impact, we got to have an amazing skill set. No, wait, that's not true. Because so many times we think we got to be so qualified, and we think, oh, you got to have an amazing voice like we heard up here, which was incredible. Or you think you got to be able to rap up here, or you think you got to be able to do something. But I'm reminded that we have a really, really big God. And he can do really, really big things, but the question is, are we willing to step out? And I'm reminded of John 5, and one of my favorite stories of the Bible, when there is a lad, the Bible calls him, a boy, who a lot of scholars believe that he comes from a poor area because of the type of bread that he has. And so you could just imagine this boy is like, dang, I heard that Jesus from Nazareth is crossing by, and there's this multitude that's following him, and like, be crazy to see that dude, and I've heard he's already performed miracles, and so like, what if I like pack my lunchbox real quick, and then I followed him? Dude, you know what'd be crazy? I might get to see a miracle. That would be crazy, right? Like, what if Jesus performed a miracle, and I was there and I could see it? It would be like super crazy. And we all probably know what happened as Jesus fed the 5,000, but that Bible just mentions men, but there would have been women and children, so a lot of scholars would say that there would be at least 10 to 15,000 people that would have been fed that day. And you see, what I think is fascinating is because this boy was willing to give, so many people's lives were impacted. But I think so many times we miss some of the amazing teaching lessons from it. Is I think that food was really, really valuable to that boy. But he knew it's more valuable in that dude's hands. It's more valuable. See, it's valuable to me. It's more valuable when it's it's in his hands. And you see, he could have said, no, I know the disciples and Jesus want this food and they want, but I'm good. I don't really want to give. This is my food. I might not have a lot. But this boy is willing to give, not because he probably felt like it. A lot of times we don't always feel like it. But he did it anyways. And Jesus took what I believe was probably valuable to that boy and made it so much more valuable to so many people. You see, when he got up, he probably thought, man, there's a chance I get to see a miracle. But I doubt, it's just my opinion, I doubt he thought, I get to be part of a miracle. But he was, because he was willing to give. And you see, when we are willing to give, to step out with our finances, with our energy, with our resources, with our relationship, with the skill set that we saw from so many amazing boys and girls that were up here, when we're willing to give that, we have no idea what God will do. But you see, we don't serve a God that finished performing miracles 2,000 years ago. We serve a God that's still performing miracles all the time. But I believe we also serve a God that's looking for willing people that are saying, hey, this is valuable to me. This food, my lunchbox, is valuable to me. But I know in your hands, you can do so much more than I can do. When we give you our skill set, our heart, our resources, you can do so much more than I could ever do, than we could ever do. Because we got to remember, we're not the ones that can perform the miracle. I can't do anything.
That's it. Come on.
But he can. And are we willing to put it in his hands? You see, we get to share that with the next generation as they get to hear the voice of truth, but then they also get challenged to step into their purpose, into their calling. And they might be able to accomplish amazing things like the young girl I was just talking about, or like the amazing boys and girls that we got to hear from today, or whatever it is that God has in store for them. But will they ever hear? If you don't give, will they ever know? If you don't send? That's a big responsibility on us. And the question is, are we willing? Alexander the Great took a few of his soldiers and he marched to a fortified city. And he asked the opposing king to come down and talk to him. And he asked the opposing king to surrender. The opposing king said, why? We have an army. We have a fortified city, and you have a couple men. And Alexander the Great said, let me give you a demonstration of why you need to surrender. And he told his men to line up in a single file line and start walking. And they did, right to the edge of the cliff. And one by one, they walked off the edge of the cliff and fell to their death. Till 10 of his men had walked off the cliff, and they said, stop. And the rest of you come back and stand by me. And they did instantly. Stood beside Alexander the Great. And the opposing king was shaking, terrified. And all the people were watching from the top of the city walls, terrified. And the king instantly surrendered. You see, we call Alexander the Great because he conquered so much land and territory. I don't even know how else to describe him to you except as Alexander the Great. But that is not the best definition. You see, he conquered it because sacrificing of so many men. But yet, we serve a king that very, very rarely do we call great. But yet, when we deserve the payment, when we deserve the punishment, he said, no, I just want you to know I love you so much. I love you so much that as your king, I'll take the payment. I'll take the punishment. That's how much I love you. I'll go in your place. And he did. And he took on sin. And and shame and death and hell and defeated it. For us, for you, for me. That's the King that deserves the title of the Great One. And I would say maybe the question that we should ask ourselves is, what are we willing to do for him in what he loves so much? People, humanity, you, and every other person alive. What are we willing to do? Because ultimately what we're called to do is love the Lord our God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. But how willing are we to do that? I heard a story about Mother Teresa not too long ago, and she was boarding a plane, and there was this young dude that noticed her, and he's like, oh my gosh, dang it, that's crazy, that's Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa sits down in her seat, and then he freaks out even more because he realizes, I'm sitting right beside her. This is incredible. Holy cow. I'm sitting beside Mother Teresa, and he sits down right beside her, and he's like, I gotta talk to her, right? So he starts asking her all these questions, and I can only imagine how annoying this dude probably was, right? Like, and I'm sure she did it all the time, but she was so patient, and she answered all of these questions of Mother Teresa. And everything started to change, because he started as a fan of like, oh, I know about you, and oh, I know who you are, and oh, you're famous. But then she starts talking about all of the boys and girls that she's loving and caring for and helping around the world. And he can't help but become impacted. And so he just thinks for a moment, I want to do something. I have to do something. And he takes out his checkbook and he writes a check for $200,000. And he hands it to Mother Teresa. And she just says, oh my gosh, thank you so much. You have no idea. This is going to help so many boys and girls. This is going to change the life for so many boys and girls. This is going to let us get to so many boys and girls. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He's just like, oh, no sweat. It's all good. That don't hurt. It's all good. Yeah, gotcha. And Mother Teresa's face sank. Her demeanor changed. She folded up the checkbook, or folded up the check and handed it back to this young man. And he's like, what? And he takes the check and she looks at him and said, if it doesn't hurt, I don't want it. Because true love takes true sacrifice. And he takes back the check and he's stunned and he's startled, and he grabs his checkbook and he writes a check for $1.2 million. And he hands it to her and he said, now that hurts. But my challenge to all of us, man, how many times has that been me? I've just done something when it's comfortable, when it's been easy. But how often have I done it when it actually hurt? When it was difficult? See, I'm so grateful that our great King and King Jesus didn't stop when it got hard. Because it did. And he didn't want to continue. He's asking his dad, if there's another way. I'm sweating blood over here. If there's another way, I'm like, if there's another path. But you know what? Not my will, your will. And he did it anyways. I wonder how many of us in life, so many times, it's like, oh yeah, we give when it's easy, when we feel good, when we get to go to a cool banquet and hear some dude that's got cut a bunch of times for the NFL. Oh, that's funny? But what are we willing to do when it hurts? So grateful that our King Jesus finished the mission, even when it hurts. Because I agree with Mother Teresa. True love does take true sacrifice. Because you know the greatest form of love The Greeks had 4 types of love, but the greatest form of love is the agape form of love. It's a sacrificial form of love. It's not a feeling. It's a choice. The best definition I've ever heard of agape love, sacrificial love, is to choose the best interest of another person and act on their behalf. That's what you're doing here tonight. But I hope it's what we all do more of tonight, tomorrow, and the rest of our lives. Not when we get the feeling after amazing performances. That's awesome. But those feelings are going to leave. Why? Because Monday's eventually going to show up. And life's going to get in the way. And my challenge to all of us is, let's not just live the emotional roller coaster of feelings because they're fickle, but let's all choose the best interest of other people and let's act on their behalf. Because of our perfect example in Jesus. Because of the calling on our life. The urgent and divine invitation to accept responsibility for a particular task. Because we know that God has put us in a position and given us a chance to impact so many more. And because we know every single life is worth it. And we're going to choose their best interest. We're going to act on their behalf. And you know, I hope for me one day, at the end of my life, that I could say that the greatest thing that I sacrificed for wasn't a game. Because if I was being honest with you now, and you said, really, what have you sacrificed most for in your life? I would have to say, a game. To score a touchdown. To make a team. To win a trophy. Wow, at the end of your life, man, if I had to say that, what a mess that would be for me. Hey, you know what? I love people. I just love to gain more. Hey, you know what? I love God's word. I just love to gain more. But man, I hope at the end of my life, I could say, you know what? I did love a game. I love sports. I love competing. I gave a lot. But I hope I could say, man, I gave more. So that people could know the truth of how valuable they are. I hope I could say one day that, man, I gave more so that they could know how valuable. I hope I one day could say, you know what? I gave more so that they could hear how loved they are. And maybe one day, when I get to heaven, maybe I could show up exhausted. Because what a bad day it would be if I showed up well rested. And I realized my chance for trying, giving, loving, caring is done. It's over. Why would I show up well rested? I hope I show up exhausted. And I hope I could say at the end of my life that I did it for what ultimately really mattered. That's God. That's people. That's the hurting, and it's all the people that we have a chance to make an impact in their lives. And the question is, are we willing? Guys, thank you so much for having me. God bless you. Thank you so much.
You may be seated. You may be seated. We're going to be done here in